Hello and welcome back to Conversations with Claire. Today I have a guest that I have known how long? Okay, so I was actually
Maybe
a year and a half, 2 years. It was
maybe
between a year and a half
yeah,
and 2 years in my mind.
somewhere like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to bring her on today for purely selfish reasons, honestly. But then there's going to be a lot of useful stuff in here. So my guest is Sylvie McCracken. She's a real estate investor and the founder of McCracken Property Management. She's originally from Argentina, but she lives part-time in Oregon, part-time in Austin, Texas, and she is a mother of 3 who has had quite a health journey. And that's like predominantly why we're here, but she does a lot of other cool stuff too. So we'll see what all we get to. So anyway, welcome.
Thank you for that intro. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And okay. So I do always like to start. The easy grab is just like how we met.
Yeah.
And I usually tell the how we met, but I think I want you to. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I'm totally good with that.
Do it.
Yeah. So I reached out to you, maybe it was at Instagram or something online.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to up-level my health and my fitness in particular, in particular with nutrition and workouts and all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. So that was probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and started working together mostly on the nutrition front.
Yeah.
And also on kind of managing the fitness and workouts and all that.
Which has been so crazy cool to watch from afar this whole time. Yeah, so I think it was on Instagram, something like that. And what's funny is we now know that like I was so early stages of all of that. And you've kind of watched a bit of the iteration of like the app expanding and then even just the experience. Like it's funny because the offering at 2 years ago was still like tremendous care and effort, but all of the systems were definitely needed a lot of work. So anyway, it's funny because I'm like, today it's such a different experience than it was even 2 years ago whenever someone comes in for the online bit. But anyway, yeah. And so at that time, I think, well, we actually met up in person. That was cool because you were local. So we met up in person to kind of get the party started. And in my opinion, you have been so silly patient and so silly consistent throughout all of it. And what do you think whenever I say that?
That's funny that you say that because that wouldn't be my characterization.
Yep.
But I guess, you have more data points for sure in terms of humans in general. But for me, it's been a journey of not beating myself up and being patient with myself, with seasons and, all the different balls that I'm juggling and having this goal and all the things that are required to make this happen that, sometimes feel like they're doable. And some weeks it's like, I'm just here surviving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I had a feeling you would feel that way because when I say consistent, you think, well, wait, I'm part-time here, and then I'm over here and I go and do these, as retreats, the appropriate name?
Yeah. Retreats. And then also I do dance festivals. Like I'm just on a plane 90% of the time. It feels like, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's when I say, but the consistent part to me is like, always mindful of and what is within my control, given all of these circumstances. And so anyway, that's the coach's perspective. And when we look at your results over the course of time, it's like, it is working throughout the entirety of it. So anyway, I do want you to kind of take me back a little bit before we get into some of that stuff, because you already had a heck of a health journey before I came into the picture. And there was already so much that you had done at that point. So just kind of, I guess I want to go back to like, where did your curiosity for your own health kickstart? What was going on? All that.
Yeah. So, it's a really long journey. That could fill, 10 hours for sure.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because as a kid, even as a teenager, it's like I was interested in nutrition. This is pre-internet, from the before times. And so I remember asking my mom to like, can I go see a nutritionist at like 16, 17? And because I wanted to lose weight, as many 16-year-olds that are already too thin want to do. And I wanted to do it the right way, and I wanted to do it the healthy way. And so, of course, I won't even bother telling you the diet they gave me because you'd be horrified. But yeah, so my interest was all the way from there. And then I wanted to go to med school. That, started to happen and then didn't happen because I had a baby at 18. That's a whole other story. But so I had this like curiosity and interest, and I was a very sick kid. I had all kinds of health issues, as a teenager, as a 20-something. It was a whole journey of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and, you know, 100 other things, right? 100 other diagnoses. So by the time I was 31, something like that, I'd already had all 3 of my kids. And that's when I finally sought some help, found functional medicine, found naturopaths, and started going down the rabbit hole hard.
What was your health life like when you started to go down those rabbit holes? Like, where had we gotten to? So the sick and PCOS, but did you also did you get autoimmune diagnoses? I mean, you said there was all sorts of stuff. And then I guess I want to get really like granular on like, what was day-to-day life looking and feeling like when you were in your early 30s, when you were seeking those answers?
I mean, part of it was I was in such survival mode because at that point I had a teenager and 2 toddlers by the time, you know, I was 31. And, you know, and my husband at the time was away for 7 months. So I was on my own with all of them. I was working full time as a celebrity personal assistant. So you can just imagine kind of my work stress, my day stress, and juggling it all. And I wasn't sleeping, right? Because I was taking care of babies and everything else, and, you know, gained a lot of weight. Part of that was, you know, the most recent 2 pregnancies. And everything was all over the place. My periods were all over the place, completely unpredictable, you know, skin issues, digestive issues, and all of it, like, you know, because it was so gradual and had gotten worse and worse over time, it just seemed like this is just normal to some degree. I just didn't even, I was just like, oh yeah, of course you're, you know, you're tired or fat or whatever. Right. And so I was listening to a podcast by a chiropractor that was talking about all of these different things and autoimmune disease. And I was like, what do you mean? And so I went in and did thousands of dollars of testing. And sure enough, they were like, you probably have Hashimoto's. You probably, if you don't already, you're going to end up with MS. Pardon me. And so, you know, went down that functional medicine sort of testing, and they were like, here's what you should and shouldn't eat, and handed me essentially what was an autoimmune paleo diet. And this is coming from a standard American diet of like, what do you mean? All I eat is pizza and pasta. What do you mean I can't have tomatoes, you know?
Right.
So that was, and then not only that, it was like, you know, working full time, 2 toddlers, a teenager. So I was like, when am I going to do all this meal prepping and everything else that you're telling me to do? So anyway, that was sort of like a very marked moment in the timeline of my life and of my health journey, because the doc basically sat me down and was like, listen, like, I get it. You're busy, whatever. You can either do this or you can end up in a wheelchair in a few years. Which do you want? You know? And I was like, I think I'm going to figure out how to live without tomatoes. Right. Yeah. And so I went to task to like make it my full-time job outside of my full-time 2 other jobs, right? The parenting and the working.
Yeah.
To be like, all right, I guess health is now my full-time evening and weekend gig. And over the course of the next year, I lost 80 pounds. All of a sudden at 31 years old, I was getting consistent periods every month. I'd never in my entire life had that. You know, sleeping, I was feeling better. I had energy. It was the craziest thing. And so I was like, wait a dang minute. And then turns out, you know, some of those were misdiagnoses. Turns out I don't have Hashimoto's. Turns out I, you know, didn't have MS, whatever. I'm so glad for those misdiagnoses, because it was a slap in the face to be like, you know what? Like, yeah, this is apparently you can't just eat what, you know, the FDA says is, you know, what you should be eating or whatever. Apparently you have to,
food pyramid.
Yeah, right. Apparently you have to do some research and actually figure this out for yourself. So it was incredible. A lot of supplementation, a lot of money spent. And that's when I decided to start a health blog, essentially.
Yeah. Which is such an interesting, because all of this, yet again, like, it's me coming into your life in the last couple of years, like all of this happened before I was around at all, you know? So it's so crazy to know that like you had that season where you lost the 80 pounds, which is just crazy cool. And it's interesting as you're walking through the moment where I go from standard American diet, pizza and whatever, and now you're telling me that I have to eat basically paleo.
Yeah.
I have a client right now who has just gotten she's one of my personal training clients, and she has just gotten with a dietitian as well to kind of get clear on because she's got a lot of different things going on anyway. And like the experience that you're referring to, which now is so far behind you, it's almost, you know, there's this distance from it. But it's interesting because even in the past 24 hours, the conversations I've had around, like with her, around when that stark change comes in, and it's like, hey, I know you were living this way, but now overhaul, you know? And it's just like, most people feel overwhelmed and don't actually follow through with it because it feels impossible.
Yeah.
And so what were some of the things that, like, I guess if we get really granular in there of like, what did you start with? What were some of the starting changes? And I know you're not recommending for others to go paleo because of course it's like what's going on with you before we make recommendations. Like that's not what we're doing. But for you to make that drastic change and all of the emotional experience that inevitably was, I don't know. What were some of the like day-to-day, what were some of the big changes that you made and how did you get that done with all of the life that you had already going on?
Yeah, I mean, and the crazy part is that this is must have been 2012, something like that. So first of all, like there wasn't all the things and all the brands that we know today and all this, like you couldn't go to the freezer section and get yourself, nothing. It was like, you're either going to start chopping and cooking everything from scratch or there's nothing you can eat. Like anything with a label is not going to work. And it wasn't just paleo, it was autoimmune paleo, right? So that meant no eggs, right? Which is like, that alone is
don't
like,
do that to me.
Right.
Yeah.
No eggs, no tomatoes, no nightshades. And I was like, what the hell's a nightshade? First of all,
right.
What do you mean I got to look at the spices? So it was super overwhelming, incredibly overwhelming. But a big part of it was just getting in the kitchen. Now I was also fortunate. My husband at the time was a stay-at-home dad. And so he for sure helped a ton with that and was on board to be like, all right, let's all do this. And that without that, I it would have been a lot harder if I had to do it myself. And if he was, ordering Wendy's or whatever. And by the way, I should probably mention, like, we were not the Wendy's ordering type. Like, we were eating healthy. You know what I mean? By what many people would think was healthy. I mean, we were certainly trying.
Yeah.
We were trying to do the whole wheat instead of the white bread, right?
Right.
So it was the kids as well, the toddlers and everything else. And so it was a bunch of cooking, bulk buying of meat and everything else. And it was, I started a garden. So it was literally salmon and the kale that I grew. And it was a lot of that. It was swapping out rice with cauliflower rice and things of that nature. It took a while, I feel like, to really get into the groove of like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, it was, the teenager was for sure sort of kicking up a storm of like, what do you mean? This is what we eat.
Yeah. This is your journey, not mine.
Right. I was like, well, 80% of the time when you're home, I guess it's yours too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it was. And it was just a lot of time in the kitchen.
Okay.
Yeah.
But because the consequences of the alternative were so seemingly grave and possibly so, it's just even your quality of life then. Like now, if you were to take yourself as you are here today with the energy levels that you have and the composition that you have and just the quality of life in general, and then like transplant yourself back, you'd be like, what the, like intolerable.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how when there's this gradual decline of health, which is probably how you arrived there, was a gradual decline, to just kind of like be in this state of acceptance of it.
Yeah.
That just feels relatable with like my mold thing, of like being like, oh, it was just gradual enough.
Yeah, that this is just what it is.
Because it was just kind of like, okay, well, this is not good, but And then in hindsight, it's like, excuse me.
And some of it, some of it you also blame on like, well, I have 2 toddlers. Like, of course I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Like I haven't slept well in years at this point.
And the world affirms that for you.
Yeah.
Like heavily, like it makes sense. You're allowed to be, whatever. And so, okay. So then from there, you lose the 80 pounds. You're having a good quality of life. But now, as always with any health journey, there are new stages to it.
Sure.
And you do the whole very serious about it, but then life happens.
Yeah. Well, and some of it, I don't know, like, here's the ironic part of all of it is like, some of it I might have made worse. Some of the health conditions I might have made worse by, having, pounds and pounds of kale that I was growing, for instance, right? Like at some point I went to a naturopath and it was like, I was starting to have digestive issues and it was like, what are you eating? Yeah, I'm eating tons of, what I now know are FODMAPs and all these different things that, of course, my SIBO journey as a whole thing in and of itself, it led me to write a book on SIBO. Mm-hmm. And maybe going paleo at the time, like maybe made it worse in the sense of all of a sudden I'm having 80% of my diet is vegetables or 60% of my diet is vegetables, right? Mm-hmm. That are very difficult for my body to digest.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to talk about the SIBO now. So when did that come into the picture? And because I think that, yet again, that dietitian that I've been working with also struggles with SIBO. And she just quoted it like it was like over half of people who think that they just have IBS also have SIBO and so on.
Yeah.
You wrote a whole book on it.
Yes.
So what is it?
Yeah.
And when did you discover that that was another thing for you to navigate?
Yeah, well, SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is, I guess the name kind of says it all. It's a bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, both good and bad bacteria. So, of course, I'm flooding my body with kombucha and whatever, right, at this point. And you know, already had a digestive system that was not optimal from 30 plus years at that point of abuse, essentially. So I wrote the book in 2015. So I'm trying to think, when did I get diagnosed with it? Probably 2013 would be my guess. And that kind of took me down the rabbit hole. And again, you know, the internet was not as on it as we are today. There was not, that part of the reason I wrote the book is because it was so frustrating that I had to do one-on-one consultations constantly to try and figure out, because there were a handful of docs that sort of had it on their radar and everyone else had no idea, you know, thought it was BS and whatever else. The only sort of approved treatment for it was rifaximin, an antibiotic, and that of course, you know, has all kinds of other repercussions. So went down the rabbit hole on that. A huge part of it, not surprisingly, is diet. So now I had to modify my diet yet again, and essentially there were a ton of vegetables that had to go or had to be severely reduced. At one point, it really felt like I was just eating ground beef and that was it. You know, and this is before carnivore was a thing. But I was like, all right, if I can't have this vegetable, I can't have that. I'm just going to have the ground beef and call it a day. So that was a journey in and of itself. I did all kinds of different things. I did an elemental diet, which is essentially tube feeding formula in a glass. So it tastes about as awful as you'd imagine. There's all kinds of other, you know, better products now, but at the time, 10 years ago, this was, you know, the early days. Herbal antibiotics, which we still sell to this day, is one of our, you know, products that we sell on the website. And yeah, I mean, it was many iterations of figuring out how to not only get rid of it, but then also how to keep it gone.
Yeah, because that's another part of it, is if you find out that you have SIBO, the likelihood, I don't know do you know the percentage? Like if you get it, if you're aware that you have it at one point and then you heal it, what are the odds that it comes back, you know, even as a healthy individual?
I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but I think it's pretty high. And I mean, at the time, you know, when I was doing all this research, the stat of IBS cases that were SIBO were like 84-85%. So, and then the recurrence, I mean, the chances are good if your body, so there's a motility issue, a movement, you know, of the intestines, right? That is happening. If things are not moving, then the chances of that bacteria building up are pretty darn good. So I'm certainly no doc. And I know, you know, like, I feel like the research on it continues to improve over time. So hopefully we'll have better and better, you know, tools to deal with this. But it's getting rid of it. So this is partly why the conventional antibiotic route is not ideal, is because usually the conventional route, a traditional GI doc will prescribe you the antibiotic, say, oh, you have this, take this. Cool, you will get rid of it. Sure, you can test negative next week, but then what? Like your intestines are still not functioning properly, and it's coming back. And guess what you need then? Another course of antibiotics forever. And then, you know, the yeast infections and everything that comes with
as
that.
a result of that. Ugh. Okay, so did you ever do the antibiotic route, or did you go straight? Yeah, so you went that 100%. Route, and then you found it to be not a lasting result. It's crazy that you think of like Michaela Peterson. I'm sure you're aware of her, you know, and her lion diet. And it's just straight up beef, you know, and it's just how many people, I don't know, I'm sure tens of thousands, maybe more at this point, are like swearing by that. And it's just funny to even reflect back to like a decade ago, how it was like, meat is the worst thing ever, and then vegan. Now that here goes the like pendulum swing, and it's like you know, now that's all you should be eating. It's like, wait, what?
Well, what's funny is right before I went paleo, you know, I was vegan for 2 minutes because, you know, watched the Forks Over Knives or whatever it was, and bought a juicer for $300 and started drinking nothing but celery for a minute. Certainly didn't make things any better. But I wish somebody had told me just eat steak for a month, and who knows, you know? Right.
Yeah, I actually, this has been many years ago now, but I did the vegan thing. Did I ever tell you that?
No, but...
I did it for 5.5 years.
Oh my God. Okay, that was hardcore. Yeah.
That's insane. And in hindsight, it's been a handful of years now, and it was not a good experience for me. Like in hindsight, I remember when I first went vegan, I had the opportunity to experience eating more carbohydrates, so I had more energy. So I like noticed right out of the gate, I'm like, oh, this is great, you know? And then over the course of time, I was not prioritizing getting sufficient, of course, protein, but then also other nutrients. B12 is an obvious grab, but a number of different things. And as a result, over the course of time, because I wasn't making sure that those things were going well, and I was just simply eating plant-based, I mean, my hair was to here, and it was like the size of my pinky was my ponytail.
Wow.
It was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just like one thing, but either way, then finally, whenever I started to incorporate meat again, I was very pleased with that experience and obviously have just kept doing it. But yet again, like we're just here now, you know? So like play this out over the course of 10 years and like see what's like available then. But I wonder too, and this is where we just like play in it, how much of all these things like SIBO and so on and all these autoimmune things are a direct result of all these other things we're pumping into our bodies 100%. Like crazy that just weren't present.
Well, here's the irony of all ironies. So going back even further, I grew up vegetarian for most of my life. So grew up in a very religious household. A big tenet of that religion is vegetarianism. So from about age 7 or so till about 19, I was vegetarian. And vegetarian eating nothing but soy and wheat. Like those were the 2 food groups. And on tons of antibiotics. So many antibiotic courses constantly for tonsillitis, So you can imagine. So like how we got here is like, you can imagine how much I wrecked my, immune system, how much I wrecked my digestive system and everything else. I'd taken so many different courses of amoxicillin that they wouldn't work anymore, of course. Antibiotic resistance. And so I was getting injections of penicillin in my butt. And that was at 15, 16, 17. So yeah, by the time we got to when I'm 30, it's like my body is begging for mercy at this point.
Yeah. This is really cool because, of course, this just like up to this point is like, okay, like it's almost like, where's the hope? Like, obviously, the hope is in the 80 pounds lost, huge, amazing, and other quality of life things. But also, it's like, so you're telling me I have to be really strict and like take away all of these things that bring me joy today, even if it's temporary joy and it doesn't pan out down the road. But there is, light at the end of the tunnel with all of it, if you will.
Totally.
And so. Okay, so you find out that you have SIBO. And I mean, I guess, is there anything else on that you would like to like add in regards to SIBO or just?
I mean, the SIBO, I feel like it's like I got there from just for everything that happened. I mean, SIBO should not occur, like this is something that I think, I don't think my kids will end up with SIBO because they're not eating the way I ate at their age.
And they weren't pumped full of drugs their whole lives.
Exactly.
Like you were.
So I think that's part of it, right? So it's like, we shouldn't be here in the first place. But once you do have something like SIBO or whatever else, getting the proper diagnosis is obviously key. Yep. And the second piece of it is getting with a functional medicine doc that actually can see the comprehensive picture, take a look at all of it and be like, all right, this is your diet, this is your history, this is probably where this is coming from, and here are the unique things that you're going to struggle with. Or, SIBO might be a recurrent thing in you, or it might not. It might be from the crazy thing that you just did 3 months ago, and once we get rid of it, your body is fine. It's going to be fine. And so figuring that out, because I think for me, that was a trajectory that took forever, was realizing like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I can get rid of the SIBO. It's going to come back until I heal my entire, system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did that journey take from point of discovery of that to overcoming that?
If I had to guesstimate, I would probably say 3 years. And that was because, it would have been a lot longer if I hadn't rolled up my sleeves and done everything that I needed to do in order to write the book.
Yeah.
All the research and the self-experimentation. And also I was on speed dial with the best docs in the world, where I was having consultations, paying them a hefty amount of money for one-on-ones on like, hey, this is what I'm noticing. This is what I'm thinking. Here's my hypothesis. What do you think? Should I do this or would you do A or B? Boom, let's go this way. And just, experimenting and kind of torturing myself in the sense of like, they were like, this is a little too hardcore. You can do it. It's not going to kill you, but it's a little hardcore. And I was like, bring it.
Yeah. I'm a little hardcore. I was like,
let's go.
That just reminds me of our very first time meeting, how you were like, is it okay if you're like, you don't know what you're, I mean, it was just great. You were like, I'm pretty, like, I get stuff done in all these areas of life. And this is the one that we got to fix. Like, this is, it was just ready. The way that you came at it. And I am paraphrasing that, unfortunately, because the way you said it, I was like, I fuck with her.
Yeah.
Like, it was so like, I love this. We're going to do great.
Well, once I set my mind, that's the thing is like, once I decide, it's over. Like
Yeah.
it's happening. It's just a matter of, when, but
Figuring out that, and you have tremendous patience with the journey. I think that's one of the huge call outs for you is partially, I'm sure, like, informed by your experience. You just know that all this stuff, like, you're going to have to go ahead and take some action for an extended period of time and allow it to take shape over the course of that time through those experiences. Because you say 3 years, like 3 years is a long time to have to sit through and navigate that.
Well, and that was an international move as well. At that point, we were in Los Angeles, then moved to Abu Dhabi. So like, there's so many different pieces to this, But but I think the reason for that, I think the resilience or the resourcefulness that I have as sort of a core value comes from, there was some cards dealt that were not great, right? But like, we can sit here and whine about like, oh, a terrible diet growing up and da da da. Or we can just do what we need to do to fix the problem, right? And so that's partly why where I'm like, okay, this is the situation, cool. How are we gonna fix it?
Yep.
Whether it's SIBO or losing weight or business or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's how you've accomplished what you've accomplished professionally too, which is so cool. And we're not even really going to spend much time there, which is a bummer because you're a total badass. I do want to ask, what is the name of the book? You haven't mentioned the name.
So that one is the SIBO Solution.
The SIBO Solution is the book that you wrote about. Okay. So, and I think that it's also, I just want to call out too, because you've mentioned all of these functional medicine doctors and all this, whatever. And I think that like, it's so cost prohibitive, right?
Yeah.
And so you were working your tail off and were able to afford them, which, I mean, if we were to total up.
Sorta.
Yeah. If we were to total up how much you've now spent over the course of time, early 30s to now, it'd be like disturbing, right?
Disturbing.
Right. Because you were desperate.
I mean, I could afford it, but I also like barely. I mean, I was, I was making a decent salary working for celebrities in LA. For sure. But I was also the sole provider for a family of 5. So the plus side of, my husband at the time being a stay-at-home dad, super helpful, could definitely help put food on the table as far as the cooking piece of it. But he wasn't bringing in a single dollar, right? So there was that piece of it where it was like, no, this like disposable income was all going towards my health, and we're talking tens of thousands of dollars.
You are one bad mother trucker. Like that is so wild to think about, that your journey in life has like included seasons where you were feeding 5 mouths on one income.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you're still feeding 4.
Yeah. Well, I'll say 3 because my 25-year-old now
predominantly handles.
Yeah. For sure. She's a badass. For sure.
But then again, with inflation and so on, you're probably like,
100%.
I don't know, didn't necessarily get better.
The problem with the 2 teenagers is they bring all their friends.
Oh yeah.
So it's a lot of mouths for
gosh,
sure.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I am so grateful to not be there yet. But I think that like it's helpful to make that call out because yet again, I'll just point this back at my experience with the mold situation. And whenever I was given specific recommendations of functional medicine doctors to work with, because originally it was like, hey, you've got a skin issue is what we first discovered. And then it evolved from there. Right. But so the skin issue, go see a dermatologist. They just want to put me on antihistamines and give me a steroid and whatever. And I wound up not doing the steroid. I did antihistamine oral for like 2 weeks. And I was just mad because I was like, this is a Band-Aid on a problem. Yeah. This is not actually dealing with the root at all. And I hadn't yet figured it out. And it would take me another 6 months to find out why. But I'm grateful that I found out why. Like it could have gone on longer. So anyway, from there then chose to go get these advanced allergy treatments because it was non-invasive and it calmed the hives enough to be tolerable. Mm-hmm. But I knew the whole time, this is not solving the problem. Like whatever is causing these is still here. So I find the mold and then it becomes, okay, now we at least know why I'm sick. And the next step is mold literate functional medicine. It's expensive.
Oh yeah.
And at least in my experience in this season of my life, I chose to leave a career where I made a lot more money and was a lot more comfortable. And I'm not in that season of life. I don't have those means. And so that like, it just, I think about all of the individuals who will listen to this, who won't feel like they can, I mean, and if there's a will, there's a way, you know what I mean? Like we can figure out how to get there. And thankfully I've been able to find some other practitioners that are still cost money, but are not nearly the price of the original people that I was seeking. And I am getting results, which is amazing. Very grateful for that. But this is my own experience of like all of the cost prohibitive nature of like getting the care that you need is like, how on earth am I supposed to do that? I literally can't afford it, you know? And so you sharing those things and writing that book is at least like a resource, you know, it's like a lifeboat almost of like encouragement.
Yeah.
And also, here's my experience. I'm not diagnosing you. I
Yeah.
don't have the right to do that, but I can at least share my experience, and that's very valuable.
Yeah, and part of the reason I wrote it was, I mean, the docs I was going to were not writing books, and I was very clear, like, I'm not a doctor. I'm just here to share my experiences, experience from a patient. But I would get, and I still get, you know, these messages of like, this helped me so much. And I'm like, guys, please find other resources, because this book is now almost 10 years old. But it was like, you know, yeah, it was like people were like, what did you eat? How did you feel? They wanted, I did a play-by-play on like, this is how I felt on the elemental diet by day 3, as I'm smelling my family, you know, eating dinner, and I'm on this tube feeding formula trying to mask the flavor of it.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't ideal, but it was, you know, blogs are kind of what saved me. And these were the early days of blogging. This is when blogging was, you know, just starting to happen. But thank God, because a lot of it was, you know, with histamine. I went through the histamine issue as well. I wrote several blog posts on that. And it was finding the low histamine chef and all these different, you know, blogs that were like, okay, what the heck do I eat now within the context of this template? Like, what other things do I need to remove, and how do I keep the histamine levels low? And you know, and because the histamine, as you know, is a cumulative thing. It's like a bucket overflowing. And so It was this management of like, okay, I'll ditch the kombucha now, but what can I have? And what do you mean I can't have leftovers? I need to batch cook. Like,
Right.
I have 3 children, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So it was just, you know, it was like, it felt like the universe was like, and how about this challenge? And how about this challenge?
Dude. And it's very much, when I think of like, for my own experience, you know, like the recent experience of going on the the low histamine thing. And it's worth noting as well that I'm talking about my mold thing. Jimmy also has openly spoke about it, but he also got sick from it. His symptoms were very different. We had our blood work done. The way that it impacted us was also different internally. And so our plans of action are not the same. So yet again, I can't give a blanket statement. As I've kind of opened up about this online, there's been a lot of people like, what are you taking? And it's like, I'm not in a place to recommend that for you. And also I have the real life experience of being alongside someone else who also has been impacted by this. And what we are doing to overcome it is different, because what has happened to us internally is not the same.
Yeah.
And so then I hate that, because I don't want to be a gatekeeper, but I also literally am not about to make a bunch of recommendations that I don't have any authority to make. I shouldn't be. And so, but you know, I'm happy to refer out to people that have been useful to me. And so if you're listening to this and you want those resources, I'm happy to share them too.
Yeah.
And we're all just out here trying. So, okay. So then let's take it a little bit further out in your situation too, I guess. Is there like, what other noteworthies occurred between the time that you overcome SIBO, you write the book about that, and then when we met? Like, what all happened between then those 2 times?
Oh man, so many things. I mean, more international moves, divorce, you know, just so many different things. I mean, on my health front, I felt like I was sort of, you know, at least I sort of understood now the template of like, okay, this is when I eat this 80% of the time, I feel good. I sort of had my health, I think, under control for the most part. Stress has always been a thing. It's been what my, you know, docs, you know, at that time they were like, lower your stress. I was like, come to my house for a day.
You love stress. What I've learned about you is you also love it.
It's, I mean, you know, to some degree, it's the fuel, right? It's like,
totally.
Because I mean, the thing is, as a serial entrepreneur, like the reality is we have no chill. You know, we have no chill. Like I run several businesses. I have several kids. Like the reality is we're always going to have projects that we're tinkering in, and this is our football. You know, it's like, it's what's fun as well.
Yep.
So it's about kind of managing that and keeping it, you know, at a level that is reasonable, and there's good stress, and then there's, you know, stress levels that are way too high. Certainly, so for me, it's about managing the stress levels like here, you know, and not allowing them to be here, you know?
Right.
So that's kind of what it is. But in terms of on the weight front, you know, which is kind of the relevant issue in terms of seeking you out, you know, part of it was figuring out like what is the way? Like what do I need to eat? What do I need to, how do I need to work out? How does that fit into my life? Mm-hmm. And everything else. And so finding, you know, I certainly did my stints of, you know, using a personal trainer or whatever it might be. And then on so the quality of food 10 years ago was a big part of what I was addressing. The quantity of food was never sort of on my radar.
Yeah.
Right now, that when they switched the quality from you know, standard American diet to eating, you know, chicken and broccoli, naturally, as you're filling things in with lower caloric things such as vegetables, you know, and inflammation going down, which we were talking about before we started recording. Yeah. Like that was a big part of the 80-pound weight loss, was just those 2 things. But then, you know, being in my 40s, now being perimenopausal, that's a fun ride in and of itself. Having to refigure out like, all right, what do I need to eat again? Like what are the macros? Like forget the quality. I got that part down. Like I have no issues on the quality front. I remember when you and I first met, you were like, and don't make it all from like whey, you know, cookies. I was like, I got you on that. Like, I got you. I've been in the kitchen at this point for 10 years, but you know, but yeah, it was figuring out like, okay, protein, carbs, fat, like what's going to get me, you know, to the goals that I have. And so that was kind of a newer thing for me.
Yeah. You mentioned the perimenopause thing as well. And then we haven't even talked about it, but a couple of years before we met, or at some point before we met, you had also just eliminated alcohol from your, from your, like, so that was a part of your life prior to. Yeah. And then you just eliminated that. And I kind of want you to touch on those things.
Yeah, for sure. Where do you want me to go first? I guess the alcohol started first. So alcohol has always been an interesting thing. And then, you know, I didn't really start, I didn't come back to the US till I was 21. So I didn't go through what most teenagers in the US go through of like this, that I'm watching now as the parent of teens, where I'm like, what is this thing with alcohol? Because in Argentina,
binge drinking?
Well, sure.
About blacking out every time you drink?
I'm talking about the sole purpose of going to college apparently being to drink beer. I don't get it. But
I didn't go there, but I did do that for 15 years. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's interesting because in Argentina, we don't, I mean, I'm sure we have a legal drinking age. Maybe it's 18. I have no idea, because the reality is most kids would rather have a Coca-Cola. It's just there's not this like prohibitive thing of like, ooh, we can't do it till we're 21, so we're going to go find ways to do it.
Totally.
We don't have that. Yeah. And so I didn't really start drinking, you know, until I came to the US at 21, almost 22, and my uncle would, you know, have a glass of wine at night, so I started having a glass of wine at night, as one does. And so it was an interesting thing, an interesting journey. And for sure, over the course of, I guess, from 20 to 40, for sure, there were times where I'd drink too much, times where I'd, you know, stop drinking because I was on a diet or whatever, right? Yeah. So my journey was sort of weird. It wasn't something that you would classify as like, oh, that's clearly an alcoholic. And it also wasn't something that you would classify as this person can take it or leave it and leaves a half a glass of wine. I never understood when people left a half a glass. How does that happen?
Yeah, I don't know.
So for me, you know, I'd certainly taken breaks before and whatever else, but it was several different things that happened that made me finally be like, you know what, I'm gonna take a little bit of a longer break. And I still, to this day, it's been 4 years, I still to this day, I never committed to never drinking again. But the longer it goes, the less it makes sense, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so at the time, this was middle of COVID, we were all drinking earlier and too much, right? And it was kind of I definitely had too much to drink one day. That was one thing. Second thing was, we were at the grocery store and my daughter, who I think was 11 or so at the time, was like, Mom, you really like wine, don't you? And I was like, yeah, baby, I do. I didn't, you know, never want to make them feel wrong for what they said. I definitely always want to be open to the feedback, but I thought to myself, I never want to hear that again. Yeah. I was like, if she had to draw a picture of me, would it have a wine glass in its hand? Like, no, thank you. Yeah. Like, that's terrible. Yeah. And the third thing was, I was 40, I was coming up on the age my dad was when he died. He died at 42 of liver cirrhosis. He was a raging alcoholic. And so I was like, you know what? I think this is a good time to take a little break. Yeah. And so it's the break that's been breaking. And for me, you know, also speaking of blogs and books and all of that, thank God for content creators, because I think part of the reason I'd never really, you know, resonated with quitting drinking before was because really it was like, you should only quit if you have a problem, right? Like, and even to this day, I'm always asked, like, oh, is it a problem? You know, it's like, well, how bad of a problem does it have to be before, like, so what really resonated with me was this sober curious movement, right? And authors like Annie Grace and all these people that, you know, put out a lot of content about alcohol and about even just rethinking your relationship with alcohol, not necessarily quitting, just like rethinking your relationship. And going down that rabbit hole made me realize, like, all right, like maybe, you know, as we're trying to optimize health on, you know, 600 supplements and like could not have more trackers on. By the way, you're the one that made this happen, because I saw you with 2 trackers and now I have 2 trackers.
Stay strapped.
It's absolutely insane, the amount of data.
Yeah, but these companies love us.
100%. There's too many subscriptions. But I will say the Oura Ring, when I'd have 1 glass of wine, was like, your deep sleep is crap. And I was like, what do you mean? You know? And so finally, I mean, I took a good amount of that data before I was like, all right, maybe I'll do this. Maybe this is actually the low-hanging fruit and the easiest biohack ever, right? As we're sitting here trying to figure out hormones and macros and what, maybe you just stop poisoning yourself. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's an idea.
Yeah. I think that's so cool. And like, it's, I think when I hear your story so far, what I hear is like, I know that you live a vibrant ass life that you seem to really enjoy. And you love stress. So there's a lot of that, but you like it, you know, but like you're doing a lot of different things. You're so involved in your dancing and you love it. You're so involved with your kids. You're so involved with your businesses. Like you have a vibrant life. And when we go through this storyline of, and now we pull out all of these types of foods and now we pull and we strip this out and now we remove this too, you know, it can almost sound like, where's the joy? And it's like, oh, there's loads of it, you know? Yeah. And so it's just interesting because if someone is in a position of having a standard American diet, regularly drinking, it's not necessarily, they're not an alcoholic, but it simply is something that doesn't really add value to their lives, but they've done it forever, whatever. Like that all sounds so insurmountable, like the idea of eliminating and like, is it really worth it? So then it's just cool to know, like, it seems to be worth it to you.
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing, because similarly to when you talked about, like, when you asked me about the food thing and how did I do that switch, like, the first 3 months sucked.
Yep.
You know, I'm cooking all the time. I'm not yet feeling better. It's expensive. Like, why can't we order pizza again? And with alcohol, it's kind of the same thing, where it's like the first 3 months, and I didn't have any tools. I just white-knuckled it, where it's like the kids are screaming and whatever, and it's like, I would love a glass of wine, but I guess that's not what we're doing. So, all right. Yeah. And it's not better right away. Like, you have to, but I'm such a big fan of experimentation, you know? And so my thing is like, let's do this for 6 months. Worst case, it was a waste of time and we hate it and let's go back, no problem. Yeah. So with alcohol, it was kind of similar to with the food thing, where it was like, holy cow, this is so much better. Like now I have a couple friends that are newer to this, and they're like, this was such a life hack. Like, how did we not know that? Drinking? Yeah. Hell yeah. And it's so interesting because like, yeah, you couldn't have told me that. Like, I just thought, okay, whatever, like, let's just do this, right? But like with dance, which is, you know, my current addiction. Yes. And has been for 5-6 years. Yeah. I mean, I never did drink when I danced because I'm so serious about my dance. Like, I love it so much. Inhibited. No, not at all. So even when I was drinking, like, I wasn't drinking while dancing because I need to land those turns. Yeah.
I love it. That's so awesome. That actually, you know, and for my journey with alcohol, of course, it's very different because I'm an actual alcoholic in recovery who had no ability to regulate anything. And it was just all bets are off once we get going. Who knows where we're going to go. But anyway, and so then finally realizing that like that was so detrimental that I had to give it up. And I'm with you. You said the 3 months there, and it's probably looks different for each individual thing. I remember for me, for the giving up alcohol bit, I needed some resources. And so yet again, I'm just, if people listen to me, they already know, but you can always DM me on social media to talk if you want resources for that have worked for me and for countless others. And I'm happy to share those. Anyway, for me, it was like probably a 9-month time horizon to like, this is the worst. I don't know where I belong, but I had created a lifestyle that was such a central, integral part of my existence at that point. You know, it wasn't just, it was a bit much. And so anyway, it was a little bit longer time horizon, but I'm right with you of like, it was awful up front. I didn't even know how to like eat food and drink water to be at a social event and not just be irritable, you know? And as like, what is wrong? I thought I liked humans and I hate this, you know? And then finally like, oh, sweetie, you just need to do normal human behavior and you're going to be fine. And I found out I actually like humans. And the big fear was I'm not going to be fun anymore. And I'm not worried about that anymore. So that's great. But it took probably about 9 months to get to the point of like, oh, this is sick. You know? Totally. And so different time horizon, same end result of giving up something that for 15 years of my life had been like the driver behind the fun. Totally. Well, and for me, it was, you know, I'm such a private person as well. And so for me, especially when I'm going, like when I'm in something and figuring it out, it's so easy to talk about it after it's already, you know, you have some sort of conclusion. But when you're in it, I'm like, I don't know. And so at the time too, it's like, I certainly didn't make any announcements. A lot of people didn't even notice. They're like, you don't drink? I'm like, nope, haven't for a year or whatever it might be. Because it's like, I'm like, it's not anybody's business, you know? Like, so it's interesting because our journeys are so different. We got to the same place, but like for me, the AA thing never resonated. The whole I am an alcoholic thing doesn't resonate, you know? But it was more of like, I don't drink. Like that's how, now when people refer to me as sober, I don't get offended, but I don't use that term. You know what I mean? I'm sort of like,
I just don't drink.
Yeah.
But like, why does it have to be my identity? You know
Do
what I
you
mean?
find it bothersome whenever people ask you, because this is interesting. I come from it from the opposite side. So when people, if I'm out in a social setting and it doesn't happen very often, I'm not in a ton of rooms where people are drinking that much anyway, but when it does happen or someone, anyway, I love it because for me, I'm like, you don't want me to. I like it too much, you know? And so it's like my way to play with it.
Sure.
But that's not really the case for you. So when someone says like, "Oh, you don't drink," like how does that feel with you?
Yeah, I've only pulled that one out like when I finally need them to stop. You know, that's when someone's gotten annoying. That's when I'll pull one of those out.
Yeah, but
and then they're like,
no, thank
oh,
you.
because then the people are like, oh, you know. Yeah. But no, like it happened when it was early days. It was like sort of like people are looking at me like, you know, all right, this is not gonna last. I'm like, just watch, because I love a challenge.
Yeah.
I was like, that might be why it lasted, honestly. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, you know, when people like, I mean, most of the time I don't even have to say anything. It's like, oh, would you like a glass of wine? No, thank you. You know, that's it.
Right.
Like, I don't say anything really. If it becomes a thing or whatever, sure, I'll be like, I don't drink. Like if it becomes a persistent thing.
Right.
Oh, okay. And if people want it nowadays, 4 years removed from this, I'm at a place where, and I think partly because I've had several friends, you know, partly influenced by me go this route, which is like just such a fucking honor, you know?
Yeah.
Where I'm like, when I get these messages of like, it's been a year, I'm like, what? This is like, what?
Yeah.
Amazing. Or people even that take a break for 3 months. Like I find it, you know, cause they've noticed I am still fun. And I, you know, they're like, oh, okay. Like when they have a reference point of like, this isn't terrible. And it doesn't have to be, we don't have to be in a under a bridge before we make this decision.
Yeah.
So I think now I'm much more likely to mention it because I want to be kind of an open book and I want to be a resource and I want people to DM me if they want to or want to talk about it and be like, hey, was it like this? Because I don't think I have a problem, but like, It's like, I'm up for all those conversations, you know? So I think that's kind of what it is. But I just don't identify with the term sober. People will sometimes be like, oh yeah, Sylvie's sober. Cool. I don't correct them, but like, I don't know. It's just and maybe this is the entrepreneur thing where it's like, we're so about affirmations. We're so about identity. I'm so about alter egos and all these different things that for me, like raising my hand and saying, I am Sylvie and I am an alcoholic. No, I'd rather identify with something else. Like I just don't drink.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I love too that people can say you're sober or whatever, and you can just kind of like water off a duck's back. Like you're like, okay, whatever.
Sure.
That you aren't overly concerned with someone else's perception of your actions.
No, because here's the thing, and I mean, I'm certainly no expert on this, but I do feel like my opinion on alcoholism is it's a spectrum, and for sure I'm somewhere on it. You know, and maybe most of us are somewhere on it, right? Because I do think it's an addictive substance, period. And so now my dad was, you know, so far on that spectrum that he was having vodka for breakfast and eventually died because of it. That's on one end of the spectrum. I was nowhere near there, but I still feel like for sure I was in the situation where it was like, should I have a second glass of wine? Should I not have a second glass of wine? And doing this, it was just, there was all this chatter going on where I'm like, that needs to go.
Right.
Like that's something.
Right.
That's on there somewhere, I feel like. And so for most people that are really struggling with it, they're like, oh my God, that's it? That was your biggest problem? Where I was like, if I wanted a glass of wine, usually because I was counting calories or whatever, I would pour a glass of wine and then I'd pour the rest of the bottle out because I didn't want to have the negotiation on the, So, you know, for me, that's some sort of addiction for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's some really cool literature out there that yet again, I will share with people if they DM me.
Okay.
About that. And of course I'll share it with you if you would like, but about that spectrum that you're referring to.
Yeah.
And it definitely like, for me was like, I've reached a point now where controlling it and enjoying it don't happen simultaneously.
Yeah.
I am either controlling it or I am enjoying it. I'm not doing the same. They're both at the same time, which a normal drinker would probably do that.
Well, and the moderation game was no fun anymore. Like for me, it was like, and I am this way with a lot of things.
I was gonna say, you've said this before. I'm an abstainer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm just better at abstinence than I am at moderating with most things. Like there's things I don't really care about. Like there's 3 chocolate bars in my house right now. I have not opened any of them because it just doesn't interest me. But there's things where like if it was, then I wouldn't be able to have just one bite, right?
Yep.
I'd have to like eliminate the whole thing.
Yep. Yeah.
That's just easier for me.
Totally. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to get into like the specifics of today soon, but I do want to stop off again at perimenopause before we go there.
Yeah.
And so What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is new. I'm in it and I have no idea. But I'm 44 and a half. 44 and a half.
Which
And
girl, can we talk about, if you're watching on YouTube, her skin is amazing. She looks amazing. As soon as she says that, I'm like, crushing it. Anyway, go ahead.
thank you. Appreciate it. But no, it's an interesting thing.
Hair
because
is amazing. I'm done interrupting. Okay.
the curls doing what they do. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing because this is my latest sort of health project, so to speak, right? Of like, I love a project, but I am a health nerd at the end of the day, even though I don't actively health blog anymore. My health blog still is up. It's Hollywood Homestead. It's still living up there. It has plenty of SIBO stuff on it, but my current kind of health obsession is figuring out this hormone piece. And because I've definitely started to notice changes in my sleep, in my libido, in my skin, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like diving into the literature on perimenopause, and lo and behold, there's not a ton. I mean, thank God for some of these docs and content creators that are out there educating, but you go to the traditional route and they're like, your labs are normal and therefore we're not going to do anything. It's like, bro, I'm coming here telling you there's something going on, and why do we need to wait till the house is on fire before we do something? So as I do, I rolled up my sleeves, did all the research, and I show up to the doc. I find the doc that will collaborate with me to where I'm like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I want to experiment with 100 milligrams of progesterone. Can you write me the script? Essentially is what I'm coming in there for. I'm like, I don't have the script writing ability, but I'm pretty sure this is what I want to experiment with, that and testosterone. So those two I started literally maybe 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I'm already seeing improvements. I don't think we're right there on the dose yet, but I'm loving seeing improvements. And also I'm doing things like testing, all kinds of lab tests for sure on different days of my cycle, because data helps, I think.
Yeah.
And it's really hard with perimenopause. I mean, I'm certainly no expert, but the docs will tell you it's really hard to, because your estrogen levels and whatever will change over the course of 24 hours even. So like catching that perfectly on a lab test, very difficult. So I'm finding a doc that was willing to treat my symptoms, even though my labs are perfectly normal.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing things like testing ovulation tests and whatever else to figure out like where am I in my cycle, because my periods are so wacky.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this? Where am I? Like what? Because they're like day 10 of your cycle. I'm like, well, let's do our best guess here.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting, because I don't want to do the traditional route of waiting until you're 60 and I don't know, insane, and then taking care of it. Like, why not now? Like at the little baby doses, like microdosing is a thing.
Yeah.
On every front. Like you can microdose anything.
Well, and you've got now people like the doctors you're referring to, like Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, of course, is like the in my opinion, the kind of leading charge on the whole. And she works with some other practitioners who really specialize in all this stuff. And I'm sure yet again, and this is where we go back to the cost prohibitive thing, because you go to the gold standard and it's like, well, it's not cheap to hang out there.
Yeah.
And so then you have to figure out a practitioner that you can work with if that's not an option,
Sure.
So it's just the reality of it all, but sharing the experience certainly matters. And she and her colleagues that I believe are doing good work say that, like, as women, your hormones, they're gonna go, like, you don't get to avoid that they go wonky.
Yeah.
And so then hormone therapy, just doing all of these different things as a woman, as you age, just kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, the testosterone dosage that you're on right now, do you mind sharing
Yeah,
that? And yet again, we're not recommending it for anybody
sure.
else, but I'm curious.
Yeah, so it's 0.5 milligrams, and that's where we started, and we'll see if we go up from there or not. It's been only a couple weeks.
Yep.
And so and they said it would take several weeks to really like show up on my labs or whatever else. I feel like I'm already, who knows, maybe it's placebo. I feel like I'm already noticing an improvement.
And when you say an improvement, we talking like energy? What are we talking?
Yeah, energy, libido, and then sleep is probably more the progesterone that's helping with that, which I think still could use some improvements. So maybe we'll go to 200 milligrams on that. I don't know. But from the 100 on 100 progesterone, 0.5 of testosterone.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I think, we'll see. I mean, Amy Killen is someone I follow on Instagram who does great content. Mary Claire, last name is escaping me as well. And, I feel like that's been super, super helpful. And there's a lot of lifestyle interventions that we can do. Mm-hmm. I feel like, so there's that too, you know? Right. So yeah, it's a thing. I feel like, figuring out this piece of the puzzle. Now it is, I will say, on the expense front, because you mentioned that as well, I feel like this is where, doing a lot of your own research really, really helps. That's free, takes plenty of time, but and for me, it's more about being in control of the situation. And then on the cost front, I mean, there's a lot of the labs that will be covered by insurance. If you have health insurance, so that's good. And seeing a doc that your insurance covers, I'd probably start there if cost is an issue, and then figure out, then decide, okay, like this is something that you're going to invest in. For me, I've done this when I was broke as a joke, and I've done it now, and I feel like health is just it's a line item in my budget, and it's a hefty one, because I feel like this is the one Maserati that we were born with. We do not get to trade it in. And this is the one we're riding till the wheels fall off. So like it has to come out of somewhere else. I don't have expensive shoes, expensive handbag, whatever. Like there's plenty of things I don't spend money on. This is one that I'm going to spend, and I'm going to spend pretty heftily on. It does piss me off that the testosterone was $61 when it's free for a man, knowing full well that we at some point are going to need it. I don't understand.
Those same doctors say that men may never need it if they 100%. Take care of their other factors of life. All the other stuff, they may never need it. Now that's also case by case, and not saying whatever.
Yeah, don't get me started. But I feel like it's a thing. Like we need it. So all right then, let's do it.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool thing. One of the things also that is easy to identify from me about you is I think a lot about what and with love, I suppose, because I work in this industry, I'm really trying to find ways to lovingly encourage people to align with what they say their priorities are, And so like what I see from you is like, you say that your health is a priority, and you just mentioned that you back it up because you've deprioritized these other expenses to prioritize this one, because it is, so your actions, your pocketbook, they align with what you say, that like my health matters to me, and I'm going to prove that in all of these actions, in these day-to-day actions, in the way that I budget and so on. And so, I mean, like when I point that out, one, I'm just giving you kudos because that's dope. And two, it's just an encouragement. Like it can be hard to look at our own behaviors and go like, oh, what I say and what I do are not the same thing. And the easy grab 100%. For me would be, I feel Jimmy's been quite helpful with me with my sense of urgency with my business growth, and it's like, okay, you say that that's a priority to you. Let's really inventory your day to day. And like, does that make sense? Do you behave in such a way that you mean business, or do you just like the idea of it and do a lot of different activities that are really just hobbies and education, but they're not moving the needle? Yeah. And so you, as someone who thrives in business, is probably like, oh yeah, like.
Well, I've coached plenty of people through the business thing, and I coached health professionals specifically on business. So it's an interesting thing.
So you've dealt with me.
I've dealt with several of you. No, but I think it's like your calendar and your pocketbook are the two places where it's like, if it's important, that's where I want to see it. And that's not to shame anyone that doesn't have the money to go see a functional medicine doc or whatever else. It's like, start where you are, because the reality is, even like when I started 10 years ago, if I couldn't have scrape together those, 20 grand or whatever initially to really go down this health route, even just doing the diet would have cleared the clouds enough for me to be able to get going. And that often is a feedback loop. If you feel better, you're going to be able to make more money. Like I'm a firm believer in all that. So I feel like, whatever you can do within your means is great, but audit your time and audit where your money's going. Because 9 times out of 10, I find that there is some money to put to this. There is some time to put to this.
Totally.
Even with someone as busy as we are and whatever else. Like, no, if you want to do something, you have time.
Always.
Yeah.
Okay. So then now we take it to now. And so you're doing the different, you're kind of tinkering now with the hormone stuff, but you mentioned the volumes of the foods. So it became healthy foods or foods that were supportive to what you have going on. But then when we started working together, it was okay, well, how much is actually taking place here? Is this supportive of a body composition that I desire having? And then also incorporating and becoming a regular practitioner of resistance training and having to overcome the fear that was there. And so why is all of that worth it? And how's it going?
Yeah, it's been it's so interesting because like now I realize like how easy, how much easier it is. Like where I'm just like, even on my, ride here, I'm like entering some stuff into my Fitness Pal and whatever else. Whereas before it was like, wait, what do I have to do? Okay. Like it felt like I had to spend so much time and energy and it was so hard and I had so many questions. And now it's just,
that's a great thing about you. You ask the questions.
Oh yeah,
a lot of people will hire someone and then not ask the questions that happen internally.
Yeah.
You ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
It's great. It lets us get work done.
Well, and I'd bring you the what I thought were like stupid problems where I was like, all right, here's my excuses that I need you to help me debunk, because here's where I'm about to go with this, and here's why, and here's all the like chatter that's happening, and I need you to help me untangle this and be like, what if you just do this one thing, and maybe you don't have to, because I'm a very all or nothing person. I'm a very, if we can't do it perfectly, let's not even bother kind of person. So that's something that I've had to work on a lot in this journey, because guess what? When you're juggling so much travel, you live in 2 different places, you have 3 kids, you have however many businesses, you know, it's like, it's a lot where you're like, yeah, sometimes I didn't get to meal prep the chicken. You know what?
Yeah.
I just didn't get to do it.
Right. I want to hop to your parenting and having the kids and juggling all of the life stuff, because it seems like you have a kick-ass relationship with your kids. They're very involved in your life. You're doing the things you just mentioned about taking them with you to train and so on. It's just so cool. But before we go there, I think about the time that you just invested to come sit down and have this conversation. We're already over an hour in. You took time to get here. You're going to have to go home after this, and you've got a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. And so it almost surprises me in that you're willing to come and sit and have an at-length conversation about this stuff when I know that you have a lot of other stuff going on, and you're not gonna pitch a product. Now, mind you, if you have something to pitch at the end, we'll do that. I'd love to, but like you're not selling something. You just simply like are choosing to come and give your time and share about this. And I'm just curious, why are you doing that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's the thing is like, I mean, first of all, it's certainly I have benefited a ton from people sharing their journeys. Like if it was, thank God for the internet. I know most people listening are like, what do you mean? We were born with the internet. Like, no. There was a before time where we couldn't Google our way out of things. And so thank God, everything from my SIBO journey to now the perimenopause thing to finding you to whatever, like it's been because people share things online. Yeah. And so I would love to give back, you know, in that way, if I can help in any way. I'm happy for people to DM me. I don't have a ton of time, but I can certainly point them in the right direction, whether it's on SIBO or anything else. Right. So it's that, but also I'm a health nerd at the core. Yeah. And so this, even though like I'm not actively health blogging, I mean, the health blog does exist. It makes a little bit of money. So cool. But like, I'm not actively spending time health blogging. I'm never going to stop health researching. Yeah. Because, you know, it's not just about getting out of the hole, out of the ditch, which we've done like in a lot of ways, right? Getting out of SIBO, PCOS is like non-existent, you know, all these different things. Like my periods have been consistent from 30 to 40 years old, which is crazy after 30 years of having no idea where I was on a cycle. Yeah. And now it's about like, okay, we're at normal. I mean, by a lot of means, I'm sure my health is very good compared to an average 44-year-old female. Yeah. But my thing is like, can we get it better? Yeah. Like, how good can it get? Yes. Right. And so I love these little projects, these little tweaks, you know, because it's like at this point where my horizon is like, how can I make it to 90 out of a wheelchair with very good health, so I can hang out with my grandkids and my great-grandkids? Because realistically, my daughter's about to be 26, okay? Yeah. So my hope is I can be here for a long time and not break my back when I bend over to pick up a pencil, right? And so part of the putting on a slab of muscle and all of that is with that in mind, of like, how good can we get this? Because I plan on continuing to travel the world and, you know, all these different things. So how cool can it be? Yeah.
Well, and I love that even just, you know, I think all the time about reframing and the way that we speak about different things. And that's just a huge part of what I do, right? And with others, like even in the gym, you know, like we don't say we have a weak side. We don't have a weak side. We have a non-dominant. We have an area that we're improving. We don't have weaknesses. We just don't speak in that way anymore. Yeah. And why do I think about that so much? Because there were so many years of my journey where I was so you will never be, you can't, you've never been, you name it. It's like, absolutely not. Yes. Yeah. And so those are huge reframes. But even with what you're saying here, you're treating each one of these things. Now, it would be very easy for, and many, like, to show up to PCOS, to show up to SIBO when you discover that you have these things going on, whenever you thought that you had Hashimoto's, whenever you get into perimenopause, any one of these stages of the journey, it could be easy for you to go, woe is me.
100%.
this is another problem for me.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, and instead you're going, this is a project. This is an opportunity for me to learn and optimize and overcome. And that is cool.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, I definitely have a woe is me moment first.
Yeah, you get to go there, but then you reframe it and you don't
totally.
stay there.
Totally.
And that's huge because that gives you agency back.
Totally.
So.
Well, and the other piece of it too, of being here today, is like part of like my whole motivation for the last decade plus of being an entrepreneur, which it's crazy that it's been that long, has been freedom, you know, freedom to do whatever the heck I want. And so it doesn't have to have an ROI all the time.
Yeah.
Like I can sit here and talk about health because I freaking feel like it.
Yeah.
And I've built my business in such a way that I can do that on a Wednesday morning.
Yes. I love it. And I feel so honored that you're choosing to do it with me. Okay. Okay. So I do want to talk about your kids.
Yeah.
How do you work them into your life so that way, because like y'all be hanging out a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, nowadays I feel like, you know, because I'm divorced and I only have them 50% of the time, it feels like not a lot for me. I would love to have them more than that, but you know, fair is fair. So, I mean, it's not working them into my life. It's working my life around them to some degree. And I don't want that in a martyr mom way, because I certainly was president of the Martyr Mom Society for long enough, and I'm not about that life, but like they really are like one of my main, you know, jobs in life. One of my main roles in life is to be a mother. Mm-hmm. And so it looks a little bit different with all three of them. They are homeschooled. The smaller ones are homeschooled. And so that's a whole thing in and of itself. Yep. One goes to a homeschool co-op. So there's some carpooling there. The other one is homeschooled, which looks like a lot of time on the weeks I have her, a lot of time spent together. And she's kind of an intern for my business, which is fun in a lot of ways because I really do. I mean, again, I'm sort of like low key trying to influence them to be entrepreneurs if they want to, get into real estate if they want to. And so I love dragging her on meetings with me, or having her do little projects that help assist. Yeah. And so it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. It's like we're working and we're also homeschooling. Yeah. And then I have a rad almost 26-year-old who is forging her way in the world and traveling and working and doing her own thing. And I spend as much time as I can. Right now she's on an adventure in Argentina, which is where we're from. And so where she was born. And so I get to see her a little less often, but I was just there in April. I'll be there again in December. And so, you know, that looks different. It looks like a lot of FaceTimes these days. Yeah. And really trying to be, I mean, my goal as a parent is really for my kids not to need me, but for them to want to have me around, if that makes sense. And I think it looks different. Like now being the parent of an adult, that role is different in that I get to stand back and be like, how can I support you? You know, be there to where it's like, if she calls me, if she needs me, whether it's a question or whatever, or a hug, like I'm there, or advice on the, you know, on the chance that it might be that, but I'm not overbearing and trying to be like, let me control and teach you how it should be. Like she's her own individual, she's her own adult and gets to figure it out, you know? Yeah. And I'll be there in whatever way is supportive to her.
What helps you keep that frameworks internally? Like that seems like such a healthy approach. What helps you have that approach? Because it can be very easy to want to.
I was on the receiving end of that. And so it was having the unhealthy, like the pendulum so far in the other direction. You know, not just with, oh boy, let's see let's see what waves I can create here. Not just as a daughter, but as a daughter-in-law. It was such an extreme of unhealthy that for me it was like, you know, it really took me down the rabbit hole of like, how should it be? Or how would I have liked it to be? Let me see if I can do that as a mother and as a future mother-in-law. Like, let me see if I can. I think the realization is once kids are an adult, once kids grow up and they start to form their own family and they, you know, have a partner and eventually have kids and whatever else, we as parents pass on to be extended family. Mm-hmm. That is not the family nucleus anymore. My job is not integral to the day-to-day. I don't get to tell my kids how to raise their kids. I certainly can be there as a resource. I certainly can, you know, if you need me, if you have questions, I will answer them, whatever. But I don't get to, it's not my place anymore. I get to stand back and I get to be like, I'm here on the bench. If you need me to come in, cool, I got you. I mean, what do you need? I'm here, you know? Now, of course, if I see them walking into, you know, the train headlights, I'm going to probably leave all that aside and be like, hey, I don't care if you're 40, I'm going to, you know, but the reality is that's the role. And it's probably the hardest role is to sit on your hands and be like, all right, you want to do that? Yeah. Okay.
I commend you. I can't wait. am excited. It's not happening relatively soon, but like I want to be a mom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And so I listened to these things. I remember being around a couple of different family units when I still lived in Oklahoma, and then having the opportunity to be around some people here who like, I've loved getting to learn from others things that I like observe, and I'm like, that's really cool. Like that's a really cool approach. I really like that. And so that being said, I also have a mother who totally stands back and lets me do my thing and answers when I call. Like she's totally awesome. So I'm not saying that in some sort of a bad way, but it is really cool because even with your choice to homeschool them, like that's work for you. Yeah. You know,
it's not convenient.
In any way, I cannot even with the whole premise of everything we talk about with your kids, be abundantly clear that like, I don't understand because I'm not doing it. But I think it's so cool when I watch people choose to go, I'm going to go the selfless route with my thing with my kids, because they're like, I mean, it's just, they weren't always homeschooled, were they?
No. So we've done a million. So over the course of 3 kids, I mean, I've been parenting for 26 years. I've lived in 3 different continents in that time. Like it's looked different in all the different, we've done everything. We've done public school, private school, homeschool, unschool. If you really want to kind of get into the, homeschool co-op, all the things. And it's definitely not convenient at all, but I'm going for exceptional, not convenient. And exceptional often is by definition inconvenient. And so they tease me about it all the time. And the reason it's sort of funny is because I'm a ruthless outsourcer. From the day I started my business, I was hiring people and figuring out how can we automate, how can we delegate, how can we get this off my plate? What are all the millions of things that I don't personally need to do in my business? I will hire someone else to do it. That's why I'm here today, is because the business is running without me. Parenting is not something I want to outsource. And I feel like, we could call it selfless, but I don't know. Most of the time I feel like I'm being selfish about it. It's like, I want them under my wing, and if my goal is to parent in this way, if my goal is to be able to have my kids not need me, but want me, I have to produce, useful 18-year-olds. I feel like my goal as a parent is to put out these 18-year-olds, just to pick an age, that are pluses, not minuses to society. And I think that's very difficult to do when you have outsourced parenting. You're not seeing them every day. The traditional route, I think, of parenting is, you feed them a Pop-Tart on the way out the door, way too early for teens in particular, to go to public school where they're spending, I don't know how many hours, 8, whatever it is, to learn how to put their eyeliner on. I don't know what else they're learning. And then they come home cranky, tired. No wonder they're starting fights. They haven't eaten properly. They haven't slept properly. What I want to start my day with is, on the weeks I have them, we sit down to breakfast as a family, as most families sit down to dinner. Sophia makes breakfast, Milo does the dishes, and we get it done. But we sit down and that's where the Socratic discussions come in. That's where we can talk about whatever is happening in the world right now, whether it's with their friends or in the news or what they heard or what they think, and let them debate and have me again kind of be the last one to speak, so that they can articulate. So they're not just parroting me, but they're able to articulate their thoughts. They're able to make an argument. They're able to learn how to have a respectful discourse and whatever else. To me, that's the important stuff, not algebra. I mean, we got to learn some of that too, but like, let's face it, Siri's going to figure that one out for us for the most part. Totally. I want them to learn how to think. I don't need them to learn how to do anything that ChatGPT can do for them.
Mic drop. No, it's so good. I think that is so fascinating. So there's another podcast I listen to frequently, and he's got 3 children and they're homeschooled, and then I had the opportunity to spend like a month in Bali with a family that they homeschooled their girls, and so they were over there for 6 months and they're homeschooling them there. So I've had some opportunities to be around some different individuals that are choosing this different path, and all of you, I guess from my perspective, I can only hope to have the approach to parenting that I see these different examples have, because what I notice is like a common thread is like they like their kids. Like you like your kids, like the way that you speak about them and the time that you spend with them. I believe that if you were to put them in this room right now, I would enjoy hanging around them. And that is actually really, really a big deal for life. And then the other examples that I can think of, like, they really look forward to their time with their children. And I can't pretend to understand what it's like having to go through toddlers and teething and the whatever, where it's like actually really fucking hard. Has that always come naturally to you? You said that it is inconvenient. And I think that's an important detail.
Yeah, it's inconvenient. No, I don't think it has. I mean, and I'm not a perfect mom by any stretch of the imagination. And I feel like I had one kid in my teens, one in my 20s, one in my 30s, all three of them born in 3 different continents. Like, clearly I'm not, clearly I'm not doing it
You're
the,
not trying
the easy
to be
way.
the poster mom, but
No.
you're doing
Well, I
some
mean,
cool
and
stuff.
it's different. Like, I mean, I think part of it, so when I had a baby 4 days after I finished high school at 18, it really looked like just strapping that baby onto my hip and continuing to do whatever I needed to do, work, school, all the things. There were no like baby bouncy seat and whatever other things that they tell you need to have. There was no money for that. There was no time for that. I was winging it. I was doing my best, but I was still reading parenting books at 18 because I was one of those things where I was like, all right, if I'm going to do the most selfish thing ever, which is to have this baby and raise this baby myself when there are plenty of 40-year-old couples full of money that could do a much better job is kind of my thought process, then I'm going to be the best damn 18-year-old mom you've ever seen. And in order to do that, I'm going to research the heck out of it. I'm going to spend a lot of time on it. I messed up so many different things. And she loves to tell her siblings of how hard life was. And it was. We were broke as a joke. But it was always something that was a project for me in the sense of like my Audible queue has like 4 or 5 different buckets. One of them is parenting. I'm always trying to figure out like, all right, like now it's teens that is kind of, top of mind of like, okay, what, whether it's love languages or this, that, or the other, any of the personal development things. And also like, how do you shift gears from toddler mom to school age mom to teen mom? And you can't use the same approaches, right? Like right now, a teen's job almost is to oppose the parent and have a better way and whatever it is. So it's about learning how to communicate, and it's about letting them have, start to figure out their own life while also being the safety net, and also of course providing the rules of like, hey, we're not doing that again.
Yeah.
That's not what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Not just to them, but to their friends as well. Because my house is kind of the party house. Intentionally, I fill it full of food and snacks. And so the kids come and I love having them there. But sometimes it leads to, shenanigans. And so I'm like, hey, you're not my kid, but you're under my roof. So this is, I'm going to tell you too.
Yeah. Okay. So with all of this, I am curious if you're willing to go to share, what does day-to-day look like for you? Like, what is a typical, when your kids are with you, day look like from start to finish?
Sure. So it looks very different when I have them and when I don't have them.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the two flip-flops of the co-parenting life that I'm sure many people are familiar with. When I do have them, usually it is 8 o'clock, Sophia starts making breakfast. So I love that it's late, really, right? For school, for kids that go to school, that's late. Like they're already in class at that time. Yeah. So at 8, she starts, making breakfast. We sit down to breakfast. And, by about 9:15 or so is when I'm taking Milo to homeschool co-op. So when I'm driving him and his friend. And, by then he's already done the dishes. They know I won't leave the house if the beds aren't made. We'll be late. I'd rather be late, but they already know. So they need to, beds made, teeth brushed, all that kind of stuff. I'm a woman at the end of the day. Like I cannot concentrate. I cannot work if the house is a disaster. Yeah. And so drive them to homeschool. And right now, because Sophia's learning to drive, she drives. Okay. So she drives, I sit in the passenger seat and we go do the carpool thing. Sometimes I have a call that starts as early as 10, which I'm in the car already on my way back. So sometimes my calls start at 10. So depending on the day, I like to batch my call days. Yeah. And so I'll do back-to-back calls sometimes because we're doing various real estate investments, and then I have a property management company. So it just depends on that. Sometimes it's a networking meeting or something like that with clients in person, if I'm in Oregon. Other times, what else? Other times it's deep work if I'm reviewing numbers or I'm working on the business on improving a process or something like that. Yeah. Every once in a while, we'll go meet a new client, or we'll, go look at one of our current properties, and I take Sophia with me to that. So that's kind of part of that homeschool thing where it's like, initially she was like, why am I here? And I was like, I need you to take notes. In reality, I want her to hear these conversations, because the conversations she and I have when we leave, where I'm like, what did you notice? Like, it'll be a sales thing. She's seen me close a client in person. She's seen me negotiate with a contractor. She's seen me troubleshoot, a repair or something where it's like, no, do we need to spend $50,000 on this? Or is there a $10,000 fix we can do? And so all of those things I think are much more valuable for her than being in school trying to figure out, what do I need to memorize about elephants today? Like, that's not valuable. you know? So that's what that looks like. Then she and I have lunch together. So oftentimes she does the meal prep now. She uses the air fryer. She knows we've got little chicken, broccoli, butternut squash, whatever it is. She knows how to make all of that. So she does a lot of the cooking. And she loves it and she's great at it. And for me, it's super helpful, especially on a back-to-back call day where I'm like, I have from 12 to 1, I need to go down there, measure some protein and get it done. So that's been super helpful. And also low-key, even though she doesn't eat like me and I don't, ask her to eat like me or whatever else, she's paying attention, like they're paying attention and they're like, and protein is the only thing that I kind of, I'm like, make sure you have you got to eat your protein, but other than that, they do whatever. So they'll often be making, a bunch of rice in addition to whatever it is that I'm eating. And then it depends. I mean, sometimes we have to do the pickup as well from school. Sometimes another parent will do it. And then, the after school stuff starts. So jujitsu, Spanish classes, CrossFit, all of that happens with them. Yeah. And so I batch my work day where I know where there's those frequent interruptions in the afternoon. That's not when I'm planning on doing any sort of deep work. Like that's not when I can sit down uninterrupted for 2 hours. That's where I'm going to do 15 minutes of work in between things and move some projects along, maybe unbottleneck some things if my team needs a response, but it's not where I'm going to sit down and, create some sort of epicness. That's going to be morning time. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. The homeschool co-op is only Monday through Thursday. So Fridays, it looks a little different. And then evenings, as well, it just kind of depends. Like they might have a friend over or something of that nature. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. It doesn't, it's always, like there's a lot going on, but you have created sufficient systems in your business and so on to allow you to have all of this going on. And even you've systematized your day in such a way where like they know what to expect. You know? Because I just think that any time that someone isn't where they want to be or even near it, and they want to make some strides, it can feel like I'll never get there.
Yeah, well, and I should also say, like, there's certainly days where in order for all that to happen, because it's a very relaxed schedule, because so much of it is parenting, that there are days that I'll be starting to work at 6 a.m. And so I'll crank a couple of hours before they've even, and when we travel, so we're going to be gone for a month, for example, I'm not going to be off work. That's not vacation for a month. Like I will probably get up, do 2-3 hours of work, and then take them out and show them the world, Yeah. So but that's part of like that integrated life that I've, chosen to create over time. And it's taken a lot of time to get here too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's cool too is that Bria, I knew coming into this episode that I wanted to focus way more on your health journey and wasn't going to get the opportunity. But like, obviously you've already stated that you went from being an assistant to celebrities and so on, and working these jobs, and you had the season of feeding 5 mouths, and then you went through divorce at some point, and then you also decided to go be an entrepreneur a decade ago. Yeah. And so now you've gotten to this place. So we didn't even scratch the surface on your prowess, maybe I'll say that, I like that word, with business. But obviously you're a savage there that's a really hard worker, or else you wouldn't be in the position that you're in. Yeah. And like you said, about a decade ago, you went, I want freedom, time to get to work.
Totally. And I think, I've always, like, when I look back, I sort of realized the like hustle, even as a kid, I can see it now where it's like, I always was trying to figure something out. And I don't know if I was just born that way or, we were so broke for several of those years that there was always like, if I want something, I'm going to figure out how to get it, because I certainly can't just ask for it. Right. So there was always a drive there for sure. And always trying to figure out, side projects and whatever else. And then at some point when I had these 2 toddlers and a teenager and whatever else, I was like, I just want to spend more time with them. I wanted to homeschool. I wanted to, with the 2 toddlers, I was coming home, spending an hour of cranky time with them, and then it was time for them to go to bed. And I was gone most of their waking hours. And I was like, for what? We're not saving babies here. So that's where I set out to figure it out. And I remember thinking, I'll take a pay cut if I can have freedom. Like, I'll take a pay cut if I don't have to warm a chair for 8 hours. And so ironically, the cost, the price of admission to really get there is like, okay, you have to keep your 40-hour work week. And also you need to work your evenings and weekends to create a business to be able to buy your way out of here. And so I did that. And it was hard. It was hard because, at that point it was like, toddlers and then and work. And it was like, a couple hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then spending a half day Saturday working on a business that I had no idea how to create, learning how to create it and doing it at the same time. But in a year I was able to put in my notice and quit my day job. And I think
Hell yeah.
yeah, because I know I had not replaced my day job income yet, but I had I could see it, you know? And I was like, if I can buy these 40 hours back, then I can get there very quickly.
Yeah.
But it was that like relentless where I'm like, I will do this. I thought it would take me years. It ended up taking 1 year because I put that commitment, I plugged it into the calendar and I was like, yep, going to bed early. This is what I do. I get up at 6 in the morning, I start writing, and I ended up writing 5 books on health. And that was a big part of leaving my day job.
Yeah. You're such a badass. Okay, and you don't offer coaching at this time for people with businesses and so on, do you?
I don't have a coaching program anymore. I'm open to one-on-one coaching if it makes sense. But no, I haven't been doing coaching now for a year or so. I've taken a break from it because the real estate stuff has just kind of taken over. And you know, it's still a small enough, the property management company is still a small enough business that I'm pretty involved in it.
Yeah.
So, so coaching is something that I'm willing to do, but it's something that takes a smaller amount of my time. I'm not like running a full coaching business at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, because I just feel like someone might listen to this and hear these things and be like, okay, but I would hire her.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I mean, that's how I feel. I'm like, well, I would let you tell me what to do.
Yeah.
You know?
If it makes sense, I'm open to it for sure. Cool. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered just about everything.
We got through some stuff.
We got through some stuff.
Now we just have to figure out when that thing cut off. That'll be great.
Yeah. Your editor's gonna have a fun time.
Cut off and the editor is me. So, but that's all right.
Okay.
It'll be just fine. So
yeah, we'll figure it out.
We always wrap up
Yeah.
with. God, there's so much. You're such a badass. Thank you for your time.
Of course. Yeah, my
this
pleasure.
is really cool.
Yeah, super good.
3 things you're grateful for today.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I would have to say probably, you know, apropos of the whole conversation, my health, you know, always room for improvement, but man, alive, like it's so good compared to what it could be.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is my kids and the relationship with my kids. And the third one, I would say my friends and my support network, of which I include you in, you know, because, oh my gosh, without that, there's no way. Like, there's no way. I lean heavy on people that love me and support me and give me a talking to when I need it. So
that's so important. Being able to rely on others is such a, we didn't even go there.
Yeah.
But there are often times where there are so many people surrounding me who want to support me.
Yeah.
And I want to do everything myself. And it's quite detrimental.
Yes. I've done that. It doesn't work.
I'm over it.
Yeah,
I'm so over it.
I'm too tired for that.
It's ridiculous. I'm like, stop doing that.
Now I'm just like texting people going, does this happen? And what do I do?
Seriously. It's so great though. I really enjoy receiving messages from you because I know that they're very specific, pointed questions in regards to whatever it is you're dealing with. And you're going to take whatever feedback we're gonna collaborate on it. And then you're just gonna go do it.
Yeah.
And then you're eventually gonna come back and say how it went. You
right.
know?
Or you give me a product and I'm like, ordered.
Yeah. It's so fast though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, it's highly effective. I feel like your communication is effective.
Yeah.
So, okay, my 3 gratitudes today will be, yesterday in our workout, there was a mile run to open the workout just at the beginning. And I was very pleased with my mile run. So as we know, over the course of this year, getting sick, whatever, I am regaining a bit of what I am more accustomed to on the fitness front. And so when I ran that mile, and I gave it a good effort, but it wasn't like, I knew there was more work to be done. So it wasn't anything ridiculous. So when I ran in the door and it was just over 7 minutes, I was like, for being I'll take it, you know, like it was good.
I love it.
And of course I want to like get better, but I'm really pleased with that. So pleased with progress there. I am also just grateful the election's over. I think I would just probably just drop that there and move along, but I'm grateful it's over. And then I am grateful that this one's been really kind of like recurring. So people have probably already heard it, but it's so true. I'm grateful that Jimmy is doing as well as he's doing, as far as like he had knee surgery and he's just got so many goals that he's got this incredible capacity to get stuff done. He's a lot like you. There's a lot of similarity there when it comes. I'm amazed at how much he can accomplish in a day. It's crazy. And how good he is at his athletic pursuits that he takes very seriously. So I'm grateful that he has access to more of what he's used to. It's really fun to watch him operate at this level. I'm like, damn.
So cool.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. Is there anything you would like to plug?
No, I mean, you know, like if you want to reach out to me on social media, I'm happy to chat on questions on anything. Totally open. It's just Sylvie McCracken everywhere on social media.
Yep. Love it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the description, so that will be there. You can connect, you can follow, you can DM.
Yeah. You
whatever.
want to talk about alcohol? You want to talk about
real
estate? Whatever.
So
SIBO.
cool. Yeah. We
got
covered a lot.
range.
We have so many. You're gonna get the most random DMs.
Right. I'll be like, let's
tell
talk about digestion. Yeah. 100%.
Awesome. Okay. And then how we met is I run a coaching business, and between the time that we started working together to now, I got some better systems. A lot better.
And I don't know, and you could share, progress pictures or whatever as far as like stuff you've helped me with, because I would say hire this gal. I would say definitely hire Claire.
Thank you. How much overall do you know? Because we've tracked everything, so I know we didn't get it pulled. It probably would have been great to have it pulled up before. Yeah. But like the start point, weight wise, muscle mass, anything. Do you know where you were then to where you are now?
Oh man, I mean, I feel like I wouldn't do it justice. I mean, I'd say for at least 20 pounds. Yeah. And then, most of which was probably fat.
And then your muscle gain.
Yeah, as well. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. We need to pull it up for sure. And it's funny because I feel like for me, it's there's been 2 steps forward, 1 back and whatever else. But with you, you've always been so encouraging of like, but look at this. You're always looking at the gain, and I'm always looking at the gap.
Yeah. Yeah, and
so it's been great.
You do get those numbers so we can see.
Yeah, we do DEXA scans, the whole 9 yards. Yeah,
you do all of that information gathering so that we can go, and then your video that you sent me, which was hilarious.
My pants were falling down.
Yeah, you were like, I don't know if you can see this. And I'm like, they literally, you're standing still and they're falling.
They were falling. They were falling. I was like, you did this.
You did all the hard work, but I got to come alongside you and just like spectate and encourage. So it was cool. Anyway, that'll be in the description below. So if you're interested in working with me, nutrition, fitness, you name it, it's all there. And there are multiple offerings, whether you want to do more hands-on or less hands-on, we got options. So other than that, we just hope that you choose to have a beautiful day.
Yay.
We did it.